How architecture and social planning can create a better society. In the early 19th century, amid the roar of machines and the smoke of the Industrial Revolution, a radical idea emerged that the built environment could shape not only the productivity of workers, but their character, morality, and happiness. This idea was proposed and experimented with by Robert Owen in the 1800s. In a secluded Scottish valley along the River Clyde, he imagined a new kind of company town, New Lanark. This company town became a living critique of industrial capitalism and a prototype for utopia. During an era where urban and economic growth draw thousands into crowded and unsanitary living spaces, this company town was not simply aiming to be a place of production, it was a controlled environment for the development of what its architect called a new view of society. Today it stands as a symbol of how space, policy, and ideology can converge to pursue a radical ambition, the physical and moral improvement of humanity. Established in 1785 by David Dale and briefly in partnership with inventor Richard Arkwright, New Lanark was conceived as an industrial village driven by water power and cotton. Its location, though isolated, provided both the energy source and spatial autonomy necessary for controlled experimentation. The arrival of Robert Owen in 1800 marked a turning point. Taking over as manager and part owner, Owen inherited more than property. He inherited a question. Could industry serve humanity rather than exploit it? Unlike the speculative housing schemes emerging in industrial cities like Manchester or Glasgow, Owen rejected the dominant belief that poverty and vice were moral failings. Instead, he argued that the character of every individual is formed for him and not by him. To change the character of society, one must therefore alter its conditions, its education, its employment, and its built environment. Owen believed that the environment was a principal force in human development. Character, he wrote, is universally formed for man and not by man. To this end, he reshaped New Lanark into an architectural machine for the formation of virtuous citizens. Housing was upgraded, orderly rows of stone tenements with uniform facades and spatial equality. Though simple by modern standards, they represented a significant departure from the overcrowded slums of urban Britain. Services were communal, a public wash house, a bakery, a school, and most notably, the Institute for the Formation of Character. Opened in 1816, the Institute was not merely a school, but a symbolic center of Owen's urban logic, the pedagogical heart of the village. Architecturally modest, it stood for a profound idea that built space could teach, civilize, and uplift. The building included classrooms, spaces for music and exercise, and even areas for what Owen called rational recreation. The spatial program reflected a philosophy. Architecture was not to impress, but to instruct. The village's spatial organization revealed a tightly interwoven logic. Proximity between labor and domestic life was managed carefully. Open spaces provided light and air, while civic buildings were placed strategically to encourage visibility and access. Owen's contribution was not in decorative design, but in spatial coherence, a layout that imposed social order while elevating individual dignity. As later town planner Gordon Cherry noted, New Lanark set the scene for town planning, laying conceptual groundwork for the union of built form and moral ideology. Though he had demonstrated that social welfare and industrial productivity could coexist, Owen believed that true reform required a broader transformation, not merely in workplace conditions, but in how people lived, learned, governed, and built together. In 1817, he proposed a model he called the Village of Cooperation, These were to be self-sufficient, agrarian industrial settlements, designed to house around 1,200 people each. The form was striking. Symmetrical quadrangles or parallelograms enclosing communal gardens, schools, workshops, and shared dining halls. A clear attempt to spatialize social harmony. Owen's vision merged function with symbolism. The geometry of the settlement was intended to reflect balance, equality, and cohesion, an architectural manifestation of his belief that environment determines character. The built form was not an afterthought. It was the mechanism through which moral society could be cultivated. These designs reflected a transition from the paternalism of New Lanark to a more communitarian spatial logic. Where New Lanark maintained the hierarchies of industrial ownership, the village model aimed to abolish them, proposing instead a society built around collective governance, shared property, and cooperative labor. Though none of Owen's British villages of cooperation were realized, they would deeply influence both utopian socialism and emerging ideas in cooperative urbanism. In 1824, Owen acquired a ready-made community in Indiana, USA, the town of New Harmony, with the ambition to implement his village model in a new democratic society. He attracted hundreds of settlers with promises of fairness, cooperation, and shared purpose. Yet many came not for ideology, but for opportunity, and the community soon collapsed under conflicting expectations, disorganization, and a lack of skilled labor. The architectural plans that were so central to Owen's British vision were never fully realized in New Harmony. The spatial logic, the alignment of form and function, so critical to his earlier success, was absent. Without a unified built environment to support it, Owen's social program unraveled. As Claes notes, many such intentional communities failed not through lack of moral intent, but from an inability to reconcile idealistic principles with everyday governance, infrastructure, and spatial cohesion. Owen was not alone. Across the Atlantic, groups like the Shakers, Rappites, and Hutterites all sought to translate ideological purity into built form. Their settlements shared common features: collective housing, centralized spatial planning, and a rejection of capitalist urban sprawl. Architecture for them was not decorative, it was formative. And though many of these experiments were short-lived, they revealed a persistent truth that communities seeking to reform society often began with a plan, a drawing, a form, a layout, through which their values would materialize. Models such as co-housing communities, eco-villages, and social housing with integrated services now revisit many of Owen's principles: shared spaces, educational and cultural infrastructure, and a focus on environment as educator. These projects, often grassroots or state-supported, challenge the fragmented, profit-driven logic of speculative development. In this sense, Owen's architectural philosophy has not vanished. It has been reinterpreted for new contexts. Robert Owen did not design monumental structures. He designed systems of living, learning, and labor expressed through space. His vision reminds us that architecture is never neutral. The arrangement of streets, schools, homes, and halls can either reinforce inequality or encourage equity, dignity, and collective purpose. The lessons of New Lanark are not frozen in time. They ask of us still, what kind of society are we building? And who are we building it for?